right, guys, Chernobyl. Covering Chernobyl, the impossible task.
April 26, 1986. Chernobyl's reactor number 4 explodes, triggering the worst nuclear disaster in history. The reactor's core is exposed.
Yeah, I watched this in Chernobyl HBO.
Equivalent to dozens of atomic bombs every single day. Engineers faced an impossible challenge. How do you contain the open core when you can't even get close to it? I've spent hours digging through archives, reconstructing what might be the first animated model of this near impossible engineering feat.
So this is true, this is what they did there, what you're going to show?
My name is Torgeir and I'm a senior structural engineer. And this is the story of the Chernobyl sarcophagus.
I love the music.
The most complex building project in history.
The most complex? Nah, come on. Come on, that's not the most complex.
A team of Soviet engineers
that's not the most complex.
Designing a structure to contain reactor 4. Numerous design solutions were proposed, but only 3 were seriously considered.
On after 2000.
To be judged on feasibility, cost, manpower,
radiation.
And most crucially, time.
Radiation.
The mount concept proposed burying the reactor under a massive mountain of sand.
That's good.
This would make reactor 3 inaccessible. It could even cause the structure to collapse, potentially triggering another explosion.
Still sounds good to me. Put more sand.
Involved encasing the entire reactor in concrete,
sounds
turning
like
it into a massive immovable brick.
rectum.
But there was a fatal flaw. Reactor 4 sat on loose, sandy soil. The weight of the concrete could send it sinking into the groundwater, contaminating drinking water, or even worse, causing a large thermal
I think
explosion.
the water there is shit anyway.
That left a shelter object, later known as the sarcophagus.
Seriously, I think the ground is already shit there and the water is shit anyway.
It required more planning, but it was the only option that didn't risk making the disaster even worse.
What is it?
Увага! Громадяни Прип'яті! На Чорнобильській атомній електростанції стався інцидент.
It's Ukrainian.
Об'єкт зазнав пошкоджень через пожежу,
Собаки,
і рівень радіації підвищився навколо периметра 4-го реактора.
Это холодильник
Заради вашої
радіацький.
безпеки ми розпочинаємо тимчасову евакуацію. Автобуси прибудуть до
This is when they
пунктів збору
telling
протягом
everybody to go
години.
home.
Будь ласка, зберігайте
After
спокій
few
і
days,
зберіть
I
необхідні
saw this in
речі.
HBO.
Влада контролює ситуацію, і незабаром ви отримаєте подальші вказівки.
You will receive further instructions.
To build a shelter, workers needed heavy equipment, like cranes and concrete trucks.
I think take a tank and bomb the fuck out of this building.
The entire area was buried under deadly reactive debris. Lead-shielded and armored vehicles were sent in to push the wreckage closer to the reactor. In tight spaces, remote-controlled rovers were deployed.
I saw this in HBO.
Another obstacle: the reactor's roof. Unmanned vehicles were too slow.
This is why it's green.
Radiation fried their circuits in minutes.
Yeah.
And yet, the roof had to be cleared. There was only one solution.
Humans.
To send in people.
Yeah.
This was the deadliest place on the planet. But despite the risk, thousands
I
of
watch
men
HBO
were sent
too. I
onto
know.
the
I know.
roof. They were known as the liquidators.
Liquidator.
Вони пообіцяли нам по 1000
1,000 rubles. I do this. I clean everything for you. I go twice. You give me 2,000 rupees.
Наше спорядження було мінімальним. Бавовняний халат був занадто теплим для літа.
Those people, you know, nobody knows. They maybe died from cancer.
Нам сказали, що він
Maybe they die after a year. Maybe they lived forever. Nobody knows.
Наш одяг доводилося
Nobody knows. They won't tell.
через забруднення. Ми могли відчути, де були небезпечні зони.
But that was back in the day. They will just go. You know, that was the mentality.
Найсильніше він відчувався біля краю даху. Що б ми не робили, нам сказали
I love this sound.
ніколи не заглядати за край.
Yeah, I love this sound. The
As
sound.
workers clear debris from the reactor's roof, a concrete foundation is being made around reactor 4 to help contain the contaminated soil. To separate reactor 3 and 4, a large concrete wall is cast between them. This was one of the most complex part of the project, requiring thousands of pipes to be cut, rerouted and reconnected, all while working in a highly radiation environment.
They implanted like concrete?
A perimeter wall is being built around the site, made of steel cages filled with concrete.
Wow.
This barrier provides an initial layer of shielding, making it safer for workers to approach the building with equipment.
Workers.
To get closer to the reactor itself, workers build a stair-like
I didn't know that they
by
did
casting
everything
concrete
here.
in
Like I
layers.
thought it's...
Contaminated vehicles
I thought
and
they only put the
containers
door
are
and
even
that's
used
it.
as fill material. Staying at lower levels provides some
Here
shielding
they
from
are.
radiation
Yeah,
as they
inserting
continue
concrete.
construction. Large prefabricated steel panels were used as formwork for the concrete walls, lifted into place with DMAG cranes. The largest cranes
year
in the
was
world,
that?
and 3 are bought from Germany. But transporting
Germans
them to
build the best
Chernobyl
stuff,
is a
of
major
course.
challenge. The roads and bridges leading to the site weren't designed for such heavy loads. Some bridges have to be reinforced or even replaced, and materials must be transferred between clean and contaminated trucks before
Wow.
reaching the construction zone. Most
Wow.
of the trucks used for the operation
Still
were
there.
of the CRAS model.
Still
To
there.
protect the drivers from radiation, their cabins were fitted with a specially designed lead capsule, providing
Wow.
an extra layer of
I didn't
shielding
know
during
that. That's
transport.
crazy.
A total of 400,000 cubic meters of concrete were used in the project,
Wow.
enough to form a cube nearly as
No,
tall as the
come
Statue
on.
of Liberty. To support this massive amount of material, 3 dedicated concrete factories were built specially for the construction effort. The western side of the reactor hall was enclosed by the western counterforce wall, a structure made of prefabricated modules, standing 40 meters tall. Originally, these modules were designed to be filled with concrete. However, this step was never completed. Once the walls around the reactor are complete, work begins on the roof, the most critical part of the project. The main section above the reactor's core
Why didn't they
consists
just
of a
blast
massive
the entire
pre-built
thing and that's
structure
it?
Designed to be lifted into place in one piece.
They could handle
This
the debris
structure was
better.
known as the plane. By assembling it in a safe location, engineers minimized the need for on-site welding and bolting, reducing worker exposure to radiation. Structural engineers typically approach designs in one of 2 ways. One way is calculating a building from the ground up, where every structural element is planned and accounted for. The second and more complex way involves extending an existing structure.
Wow.
In this case,
Wow,
engineers must
that's cool.
analyze the original building structural system, often without having designed it themselves. This can be challenging, as original drawings and calculations may be incomplete, lost, or even contain undocumented modifications made during construction. At Chernobyl, this uncertainty was even greater. The explosion had likely weakened the remaining structure, but the full extent of the damage was unknown. Adding to the challenge, the roof itself was one of the heaviest structural elements ever built. A
How do you
collapse
take
could
it
lead
up?
to further radioactive
Wow.
releases, or worse, another nuclear explosion.
That's
Failure
nice.
was simply not an option.
That's nice.
Fortunately, a specialized device was made for closer inspection, the bathyscope.
Baziska.
This 25-ton chamber made of lead, equipped with a small observation window, was the only way to examine the remains of the reactor's structural system close up.
How do you take it
Volunteers
inside?
who entered this claustrophobic metallic coffin were called the cosmonauts. A name
Cosmonauts,
fitting
of
for
course.
those venturing into the unknown.
Of course.
But there are chilling rumors surrounding these missions. Some claim that in moments of crisis, the bathyscope's door had to be opened, exposing those inside to direct radiation from the
Nice.
exposed core.
Sweet. Give me
Also,
some of this
a
sweet
blimp with a
radiation.
40 kilowatt lamp was used for work during nighttime. The workers nicknamed it the chandelier, and it was later buried,
Chandelier.
being highly contaminated.
Of course it is.
During the inspection, engineers found that 2 existing ventilation shafts had survived the explosion, but they were never designed to support the immense weight of the plane beams. In a rather unsuccessful attempt, they were filled with concrete.
It's disgusting.
Meanwhile, on the west side, the plan was to rest the plane beams on what was left of the central hall's walls. The massive DMAG crane was the only machine on the planet capable of lifting the plane into place, but the crane operator only had a grainy TV screen for guidance. To make things worse,
No
the
shit.
crane's maximum lifting capacity was 159 tons, the exact weight of the plane, but that was without counting for the diagonal crossbeams.
Basically, you can
plane was
build
lifted
big
and
things, but you
everything
can't
seemed
put them up.
But then, as they lowered the boom, a loud crack echoed through the site. People turned to see the unthinkable. The rear wheels of the crane were 1 meter off the ground.
They didn't
The entire
calculate
machine
that?
was tilting forwards,
How this
balancing
happened?
on its toes.
This is so
For a
stupid.
moment, nobody moved. If the crane tipped over, it could crash straight into the exposed reactor. In a last-second decision, a 40-ton lead-filled container was placed onto the crane's counterweight, slowly
yes.
settling the wheels back onto the ground.
Yeah.
Disaster had been avoided.
Why they
With great
even
relief,
went to this
the
situation
installation
for
of the plane
begin
was
with?
successful. To add another layer of protection, massive concrete pipes were placed on top, originally meant to be filled with concrete, but because of the extra weight, they remained empty. Next came a web of steel trusses, before the top of the plane was sealed off with heavy shield plates. 4 additional beams had to be installed. 2 ran alongside the main roof, as well as the octopus beam and the mammoth beam. The mammoth beam was the largest beam in the entire
just die
project,
on.
weighing 50 tons.
You don't have to name
These
everything.
beams would support the final shield plates and the so-called hockey sticks.
Big
The
beam,
project
small
is
beam.
then finished off by reinforcing and covering up the remains of the turbine hull roof. In November, almost 7 months after the explosion, the sarcophagus was completed.
What year was
Project
that?
required almost 90,000 workers.
They had time to take
and
a
the workers
picture?
celebrated
Wouldn't
the
they want to
completion
go
by
with this
signing
radiation?
the last element that was installed.
That's really stupid.
The sarcophagus was never meant to be a permanent structure. With an expected
But it was.
lifespan of only 20 to 30 years, it is now crumbling. That's
No
why
way!
the entire sarcophagus
Oh, Russia
is
saw
now
also
enclosed
something on
by
it.
an even larger
So that's
structure,
good. Thank you,
the
Russia.
New Safe Confinement, or
Thank you,
NSC.
thank you.
This massive shelter houses a large crane, designed to dismantle both the old sarcophagus and the remains of Reactor 4. If you would like me to make a part 2 of this video,
Yeah, make a
deep
part
diving
2,
into the
please!
largest
Make a part
movable
2!
structure ever built,
Make a part
let me
2!
know in the comments
That was
below.
good. Yeah.
Thank you for watching.
Thank you for making.